300 aircraft. The number alone defies comprehension. Not a single fighter streaking across the desert. Not a handful of bombers dropping precision strikes. 300 warplanes, a force capable of leveling entire cities, assembled for one purpose: to erase a cartel convoy from existence. For months, intelligence agencies had been tracking the prize. This wasn't an ordinary drug shipment. This was the cartel's crown jewel, a massive convoy carrying enough fentanyl to poison half the continent, protected by an army of gunmen and armored vehicles. The convoy stretched for miles. Led scouts in modified pickup trucks, armored SUVs bristling with machine guns, cargo trucks reinforced with steel plating, and a rear guard of technicals mounted with anti-aircraft weapons. To the cartel, it was an unstoppable fortress on wheels. To the Americans, it was a target that demanded absolute annihilation. The cartel had grown arrogant. Their convoys moved in broad daylight now, no longer bothering to hide. Local governments cowered before their firepower. Military units were bought off or intimidated into silence. The convoy that would soon face destruction had made this journey dozens of times, each trip more brazen than the last. Air defenses had been installed on several vehicles, shoulder-fired missiles and mounted guns capable of downing helicopters. The cartel believed they had learned from past defeats. They believed they were ready for anything. They had never faced the full fury of American air power. In the pre-dawn darkness, air bases across the southwestern United States came alive with purpose. At Nellis Air Force Base, F-22 Raptors taxied into position, their stealth profiles invisible to radar, their pilots running final checks on targeting systems. At Whiteman Air Force Base, B-2 Spirit bombers, ghosts of the sky, rolled down runways, their bomb bays loaded with enough ordnance to flatten city blocks. F-35 Lightning Strike fighters lifted off from bases in Arizona and Texas, their advanced sensors already painting targets hundreds of miles away. The Armada assembled in the darkness. F-16 Fighting Falcons formed up in tight formations, their afterburners cutting brilliant trails across the night sky. A-10 Thunderbolts, tank killers built around massive cannons, flew low and slow, their pilots eager for the carnage to come. Even older aircraft joined the hunt, F-15 Eagles loaded with air-to-ground missiles, and F/A-18 Super Hornets carrying cluster bombs designed to shred armor and flesh alike. The convoy never saw them coming. High above the desert, at altitudes where the air was thin and cold, B-2 bombers ghosted through the sky. Their radar signatures were smaller than birds. Their engines whispered rather than roared. To ground-based observers, the night sky was empty. But death was already overhead, circling, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. Below, the cartel convoy rolled across the desert highway with casual confidence. Gunners lounged in the beds of pickup trucks, assault rifles slung carelessly across their laps. Drivers shared bottles of beer, laughing at radio chatter from their escorts. Some even had music playing, narco corridos celebrating their own invincibility. None of them thought to look up. In the command bunker buried deep beneath Cheyenne Mountain, officers watched satellite feeds in real time. The convoy was massive, over 200 vehicles spread across 20 miles of desert road. But size would not save them. If anything, it made them a more satisfying target. The plan was elegant in its brutality. The stealth bombers would strike first, dropping massive bunker-buster bombs to crater the road and trap the convoy in place. Then the fighters would descend like wolves, tearing apart every vehicle with precision strikes. Finally, the A-10s would make low passes, their cannons shredding anything that still moved. At exactly 03:47 hours, the order came through encrypted channels. Lightning strike is authorized. All aircraft, weapons free. The sky was about to rain fire. Invisible to radar and silent as death, the first B-2 bomber approached its target. Its bomb bay doors opened with mechanical precision. Guided bombs fell through the darkness, their GPS systems steering them toward predetermined impact points along the highway. The cartel convoy had no warning. No alarms. No chance to escape. The countdown had reached 0. In moments, 300 aircraft would unleash hell upon a convoy that believed itself untouchable. The desert was about to witness destruction on a scale never before seen in the drug war. The sky darkened, not with clouds, but with wings. The first bombs fell in silence, high above the desert, invisible to every radar and sensor the cartel possessed. B-2 Spirit bombers released their payloads with surgical precision. Massive 2,000-pound joint direct attack munitions plummeted through the darkness, their GPS guidance system steering them toward the highway where the convoy rolled unsuspectingly forward. The cartel gunners had no warning, no time to shout alerts or dive for cover. One moment they were laughing, sharing drinks, boasting about their firepower. The next moment, the earth exploded beneath them. The lead section of the convoy simply vanished. 3 bunker-buster bombs detonated simultaneously, cratering the highway and launching chunks of asphalt the size of cars into the air. The lead scout vehicles, pickup trucks bristling with machine guns, were obliterated instantly, their occupants vaporized before they could even scream. A fireball rose into the night sky, visible for 50 miles. At the convoy's rear, another set of bombs found their marks. The highway erupted in a chain of explosions, each crater deeper than a swimming pool. Armored SUVs tumbled into the holes, their frames crumpling like aluminum cans. The convoy's escape routes, forward and backward, were sealed in less than 10 seconds. Then came the fighters. From every direction, they descended like mechanical angels of death. F-22 Raptors, invisible until the moment they fired, unleashed streams of air-to-ground missiles. Each missile was a precision instrument, guided by targeting pods that could read license plates from 20 miles away. They struck with devastating accuracy. Command vehicles, communications trucks, fuel tankers, anything that kept the convoy organized and moving. The desert lit up like a fireworks display. Explosions bloomed in rapid succession as missiles found their targets. A fuel truck erupted in a pillar of flame that climbed hundreds of feet into the sky. An armored personnel carrier was lifted off the ground by a direct hit, tumbling end over end before crashing in a twisted heap. Radio antennas snapped. Weapons went silent. Leadership dissolved in fire and shrapnel. But the Americans were just getting started. F-35 Lightning Strike fighters, their stealth technology rendering them invisible to the convoy's aging radar systems, swooped in for close-range strikes. Their 25mm cannons chewed through armor plating like paper, stitching lines of destruction across the tops of cargo trucks. Each burst lasted only seconds, but when the fighters pulled away, vehicles sat burning and shredded, their contents spilling across the sand. The cartel fighters scrambled desperately. Those who survived the initial bombing wave leaped from their vehicles, grabbing rifles and shoulder-fired missiles. Some managed to get shots off, rockets streaking into the sky toward the sound of engines. But the American aircraft were too fast, too many, too coordinated. For every rocket fired blindly into the darkness, 10 precision strikes rained down in response. From the north, a formation of F-16 Fighting Falcons arrived in tight formation. Their pilots had trained for this moment for years. Close air support against heavily armed ground targets. They dove toward the convoy in sequence, each fighter releasing cluster bombs that opened like deadly flowers in midair. Hundreds of sub-munitions scattered across the battlefield, each one designed to penetrate armor and destroy vehicles. The convoy's flanks erupted in overlapping explosions as the bomblets found their marks. Still, the assault continued. F-15 Eagles, loaded with massive 2,000-pound bombs, targeted the convoy's heaviest vehicles. These weren't precision strikes, they were obliteration strikes. When a bomb detonated next to a reinforced cargo truck, both the vehicle and everything within 50 yards simply ceased to exist. Craters opened in the desert floor. Sand turned to glass from the heat. The cartel's anti-aircraft defenses, such as they were, lasted less than 5 minutes. Gunners with shoulder-fired missiles managed to lock onto a few aircraft, but their weapons were designed for helicopters, not supersonic jets flying at high altitude. The few missiles that launched either missed entirely or were defeated by countermeasures, flares and chaff that turned deadly rockets into harmless fireworks. Meanwhile, high above the chaos, more B-2 bombers circled like patient vultures. When they spotted clusters of vehicles trying to escape cross-country, they dropped additional bombs with methodical precision. Each strike eliminated another pocket of resistance, another attempt to flee the kill zone. The convoy, once a symbol of cartel power stretching across 20 miles of highway, was being systematically erased from existence. Vehicle by vehicle, fighter by fighter, bomb by bomb. And then came the A-10s. The distinctive whine of their engines announced their arrival, a sound that struck terror into anyone who had ever faced them. A-10 Thunderbolts, designed specifically to destroy ground targets, approached the battlefield at low altitude. Their massive 30mm cannons, capable of firing depleted uranium rounds, were already spinning up to firing speed. The first A-10 dove toward the convoy's center, its pilot selecting a cluster of armored SUVs that had survived the initial bombing. The aircraft's cannon erupted with a sound like tearing canvas amplified 1,000 times. A stream of armor-piercing rounds raked across the vehicles, punching through steel plating and igniting fuel tanks. When the A-10 pulled up and banked away, nothing remained but smoking wreckage. More A-10s followed, each one making strafing runs with surgical precision. Their cannons chewed through anything that moved, anything that looked intact, anything that might pose a threat. Cargo trucks that had survived missile strikes were shredded by cannon fire. Gunmen who thought they had found cover behind disabled vehicles were cut down by precision bursts. The desert became a hellscape. Smoke rose from hundreds of burning vehicles, creating a black cloud that stretched for miles. The highway was cratered beyond recognition. Bodies and debris were scattered across the sand. The convoy that had once moved with such arrogance and confidence was now nothing more than scrap metal and ash. But the aircraft kept coming, wave after wave of fighters, each one adding to the destruction. F/A-18 Super Hornets arrived with cluster bombs and napalm, turning the few remaining intact vehicles into infernos. More F-35s made low passes, their sensors scanning for any signs of life, their cannons ready to eliminate survivors. From beginning to end, the aerial assault lasted 37 minutes. In that time, 300 American aircraft had reduced a convoy of over 200 vehicles to absolute rubble. Not a single truck would ever carry drugs again. Not a single gunman would return to threaten border towns. Not a single leader would survive to rebuild. The message was delivered with overwhelming force. When America's air power focused its attention on a target, that target simply ceased to exist. As the last fighter pulled away from the battlefield, the desert fell silent, except for the crackling of fires and the occasional explosion of ammunition cooking off in the heat. The convoy was gone. Completely. Utterly. Forever. Death had fallen from above, and it had been absolute. When the last aircraft disappeared into the dawn sky, the desert bore no resemblance to the highway that had existed an hour before. Where once a confident cartel convoy had rolled across the sand, now only devastation remained. The very landscape had been reshaped by American air power. Craters deep enough to swallow buildings, roads transformed into twisted ribbons of melted asphalt, sand turned to glass by the heat of explosions. But total annihilation meant more than just destruction. It meant ensuring that nothing, absolutely nothing, could ever be recovered, rebuilt, or reused. Overhead, surveillance drones circled the battlefield like mechanical vultures, their high-definition cameras recording every detail of the devastation. Intelligence analysts would study this footage for months, documenting the effectiveness of each weapon system, cataloging the destruction for future reference. But more immediately, the drones were hunting for survivors. Their thermal imaging cameras painted a grim picture. Here and there, scattered across miles of wreckage, faint heat signatures indicated cartel fighters who had somehow lived through the bombardment. They crawled between burning vehicles, stumbled through the smoke, or lay motionless in whatever cover they could find. Each signature was immediately marked and transmitted to the command center. The Americans weren't finished. From air bases across the region, a new wave of aircraft was already airborne. These weren't the heavy bombers or supersonic fighters that had delivered the initial assault. These were the cleanup crew, specialized aircraft designed for precision elimination of remaining targets. A C-130 gunships, flying arsenals bristling with cannons and sensors, arrived over the battlefield as the sun climbed higher. Their crews had been watching the assault unfold via satellite link, and now they methodically began hunting down survivors. The gunship's advanced targeting systems could identify individual human figures from miles away, and their weapons could eliminate them with surgical precision. One by one, the remaining cartel fighters were located and eliminated. A gunman hiding behind a burning truck was spotted by thermal imaging and eliminated by a single 105mm howitzer round. 3 fighters attempting to flee across the desert on foot were tracked by moving target indicators and destroyed by 40mm cannon fire. None of them made it more than a few hundred yards from the highway. Meanwhile, specialized aircraft began the systematic destruction of anything that remained intact. Engineers flying in modified cargo planes dropped additional bombs on vehicle clusters that looked salvageable. Even twisted wreckage was targeted. The Americans wanted to ensure that not a single piece of metal could be recovered and used again. Firebomber aircraft, normally used for fighting wildfires, made passes over the battlefield, dropping napalm and accelerants. Any cargo that had survived the initial bombing, drugs, weapons, communications equipment, was consumed by flames that burned hot enough to melt steel. Millions of dollars in fentanyl became toxic smoke. Sophisticated communications gear became puddles of molten plastic and metal. The few cartel members who had attempted to surrender found no mercy in the sky. White flags and raised hands meant nothing to pilots operating under rules of engagement that demanded total elimination of the target. This wasn't a law enforcement operation with arrests and trials. This was warfare, and in warfare, enemy combatants who threatened American lives with poison and violence received no quarter.